everyone. This is Jennifer Janachek, the Director of Content Strategy for Sound Wisdom. And I'm joined today with Kay Miller, who is a leading sales professional, long storied history of expertise in sales, and author of the new book, Uncopyable Sales Secrets: How to Create an Unfair Advantage and Outsell Your Competition.
Oops.
A really fabulous book, and what's been called the most fun sales book you've ever read. And it is. There are so many humorous stories and that go along with very actionable principles. So it's a really fun read, a great read. And I'm excited to talk about it with you today, Kay.
Thank you, Jen. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start by talking about the uncopyable sales philosophy. What does that mean? How would you describe it to somebody unfamiliar with the uncopyable sales philosophy?
Well, I think one way to describe it is to say what it isn't. It's not pushy and manipulative and aggressive. In the book, I mention a Wall Street Journal article I know you're familiar with, that it talks about how people, especially young people, don't want to get into sales because the whole sales profession has such a bad reputation. We don't like to, it's not fun to sell like that. And it's definitely not fun to buy like that. And I have a niece named Shauna. When she was just about 3 years old, my mom would babysit her once a week. And one day she said, "Oh, Shauna, pick up your toys. We have to go to the store." And Shauna's like, "I don't like to be told." And I love that story with her little 3-year-old grammar because it's true. We don't like to be told. We don't like to be sold. We all love to buy things. And, I just bought a new car. I have never told anyone, "Hey, look, someone just sold me a car." No, I bought the car. We love to buy. And if we can get our customers to feel that way, that they are excited to buy because you're helping them get what they want, I call that the win-win. And it's the core of the uncopyable sales philosophy.
Yeah, thanks. I love that, establishing a win-win sales relationship, not approaching sales like I'm going to win, I'm going to win this sale. I'm going to get the sale from you. It's a very aggressive tactic. And that creates a power dynamic that doesn't lead to, even if it leads to a sale in the long term, it might not lead to a sustainable sales relationship, right? Which is what we're looking to do.
Exactly. And, yeah, and the sales I've always been in, and I believe the audience, for this book is sustained sales, either repeat sales or, referrals, references. And so I think that if we really just step back and look at our own experiences and what our favorite ways to buy and who the people we are, want to buy from, what they're like, that's really the key to it right there. That's how I define it.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely, absolutely. Delivering a solution that gets your client excited, about that solution you're offering. Well, let's think about some of the stories that you share because they're so good, and I'd love for you to share the story about your first sales call, which you describe as being a complete disaster. And I'm sure a lot of people, even veteran sales professionals, new sales professionals, can relate, regardless of where they are in their journey. How did you overcome and push past the fear that caused that first sales call to be such a disaster?
Well, I do love that story because, I do. I say the first sales call was a disaster. And I was the first woman who was ever hired in outside sales by this company called Amarok. And the product line was cabinet hardware, knobs and pulls and drawer slides. So, oops, sorry about that. They were worried about me being, able to handle all of this. And I said, "Oh no, I can handle this. I could do it. I won't be intimidated." Well, then it comes time for my first solo sales call. And I had staked out this lumber yard. And the day I drove in just to meet the manager, ask for an appointment, they had just gotten a big load of lumber. And so there were people, and they were all men, of course, in flannel shirts and hard hats, and Levi's just buzzing everywhere. And I pull into the parking lot and into a parking spot, and I literally froze. I was just scared. I was out of my comfort zone, and I backed the car out and drove away. I sped away from my first sales call. And I was just so angry at myself. And I did go back the next day. And one of the best ways to deal with that kind of, some people say call reluctance. I mean, I say it's downright fear, is to just say, what is the worst that could happen? Because you're not going to die. And then I think, how will I feel if I do it? I make myself do it. I'll feel great, whether or not I make a sale. And how will I feel if I don't? I will feel like bleep. So I know that is a beginning story of my sales career. And of course, I went on to become the #1 salesperson for a major automotive exhaust company. And I earned the nickname Muffler Mama.
Love
But
it.
all salespeople, if we're really pushing ourselves to call on bigger accounts, explore different opportunities, we are faced with that. Ooh, the phone is really heavy, or it's hard to do. So I think all salespeople really, we all have to push ourselves, even as experienced salespeople. If we're really honest, we have to push ourselves to do what is uncomfortable, and that is the way that we get to make more calls, more proposals, more recommendations, and make more sales.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I can see where, even with, procrastinating in general, just visualizing the outcome, even if you don't get the outcome you want, having the outcome of doing what you were supposed to do just makes you feel so much better. And yeah, the
Yeah,
mentality of what's
it's
the
a
worst
win.
that can happen?
Right. And that really is what builds momentum. I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes when we're on a roll, we don't have to think about this, but we all have times when we miss out on some sales, things aren't going our way, and we just have to like dig down deep,
Great.
and kind of think it through.
Yeah, absolutely. And that momentum can be so elusive, but when we get on, that's a great tactic for getting us there. I think one of the ways that you mentioned in our book, in the book, to help overcome some of that sales anxiety and also to, become an uncopyable salesperson is to identify your moves, what you call your moves. That's part of the uncopyable sales philosophy, and, reach them, because sometimes if you're not reaching the right, target, you'll have less success. You'll enjoy the process far less. So I'd love to hear, you just define what a moose is in your philosophy, and how do I know how to find my moose?
Well, the moose, I love the, that framework of saying that your ideal target customer is your moose. And the analogy is that if you are out hunting, which we've discussed, neither of us are hunters except for what? There's shoes, right?
Yes.
We have our pairs of shoes. But if you were a moose hunter, it wouldn't do you any good to find rabbits or deer or bear or anything like that. That would be a waste of your time. And I always think of what I learned in college. I vaguely remember opportunity cost. What could you be doing with that time? So strategically, and my biggest sales successes have really been strategic, where I identify who would be the very best prospects, who could I serve the best, who can make me the most money, and who can, what's the best symbiotic relationship. Those are my moves. And really, that is such a fundamental part of sales, because I think we all fall into the trap of thinking everyone needs our product. Oh, everybody could use this product. It's just great. Well, you know what? It's much more efficient and effective if you find out the very best ones you can call on. And if you have any experience in sales, for me, the best advice, I can give is look at who your best customers are. Who do you serve? Who's the most fun to work with? Who pays their bills? Who, doesn't have a huge committee of decision makers? Whatever your parameters are, when you're starting out, you need to write those down and decide what they are. But once you've gotten your feet wet, you can really say, okay, let's look at the customers I have, the ones that bring me the most sales, that are the most fun and easiest to work with. So that's what I would say about finding your moose and really targeting that particular profile customer.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, because, we think of writing, and when I was teaching, I'd ask students, who's your audience? And they would say, everyone. We can't be writing to everyone. How will you reach them? How will you know how to cater your argument to suit that individual. And it's the same principle. You really need to know, who your audience is to make, to reach them, to know where to find them, how to communicate with them,
Right.
principles matter. And I love the idea too of reverse engineering it. Once you have, some clientele built up, you can sort of, work backwards and think, what are
Right.
the traits
And
they
if
have?
you don't, you can even look at other people. Who are their best clients? Who's the competition's best client?
Yeah.
But like you said, then you learn about, okay, what language does the moose speak? Where do they hang out? What's a moose bait that you can, appeal to them with? So that's a great analogy with writing. If you just write, who cares is a good
Right.
question, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk a bit about another thing that salespeople struggle with. I know a lot of sales professionals complain about getting in the door. That can be one of the most difficult things to do. What do you recommend? Can you give a specific example of how to get in the door? It's a good strategy.
I have a really good example, and I just want to say that my favorite, saying around this is look at what everyone else is doing and don't do it.
Yeah.
Because, if you want to be uncopyable, the first thing you need to do is stand out and be unique. And if everyone else is sending emails and doing online advertising and, follow up funnels or whatever, you need to think, how can I be different? And I think the whole online world has given us an opportunity to do the opposite and to use direct mail as one of them. I have all kinds of ideas for things that you can send to people. And again, going back to the moose, if you really know that the person that the company or business that you're calling on is a moose, then you can spend more time, more thought, you can get creative, and you can really stand out to them. And because if you land them as a customer, it's going to be, right in your wheelhouse, right? So I have a friend named Trudy, and her last name is Miller. We're both Millers, but it's because we both married Millers. And she sells advertising campaigns for a company called Valpak, the Valpak mailers. And she had a moose that she'd been trying to get a hold of, an auto repair shop that she knew would be a great fit for her campaigns, and she thought she could do really well for them. She kept calling, dropping by, emailing. She said they had the best gatekeepers at this company. And that's not uncommon. So we were just brainstorming one day when we were driving up skiing, and I said, why don't you send him a card, a greeting card, and not just any old greeting card, but can you find a picture of him? Well, that's where the online and the offline really integrate nicely, because she could go on social media and get a picture of him. And, you can do this. We use an online system. You can even do it at Walgreens or the drugstore, Shutterfly, all different companies. And she made a card with his picture on the front. And, just imagine opening your mail and there's a picture of you on this card. And she kind of had a cute caption, message saying, I've been trying to get a hold of you and you have great gatekeepers. And I think I can help you get more business.
Great.
And she was saying, oh, I bet he'll, take my call when I call him. He called Trudy and he said, I want to talk to you. And so he's become a great customer. And not only did she get his attention, but she proved that she was different. And he has been really impressed by that. So that is just one small, I've got a lot of examples in the book of these things, but that was one that really stands out in my mind.
Yes. And I do want to mention there are so many great strategies for getting in the door mentioned in this book. That is one of the stories that Kay tells, but there are so many great ones. And I love how it's not just about, breaking through the noise, but also showing the client that, you're really interested in serving them. They're not just a number or a form, email to you. And so that really is a great way of conveying that you're going to do more for them than just, solicit, sales from them, but you're going to really,
you walk your talk.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thinking about walking your talk, you have this story in the book about learning to install a muffler. It's part of the section on crafting your own personal brand. What was that all about?
That is a fun story to look back on. When I first started with Walker Exhaust, at that point, there were a few women on the sales team, but I was one of very few. And I didn't know anything about muffler exhaust systems. I joke in the book about, I didn't even have that great of a track record driving. So I had studied all of the brochures and all the different literature they sent. I'd gone back to the headquarters of, Walker and Racine, Wisconsin, but I really didn't feel like I had the credibility to talk to customers from their perspective. And so I went to one of my customers. I sold to two distributors, and then they sold to the muffler shop. So I went to a muffler shop and said, will you teach me how to install a muffler? And of course, he was pretty amused by this because, I'm this young, petite woman. Sent me to Red Wing Shoes to get some steel toe shoes so I wouldn't, smash my toe. And you could read the story, embellished story in the book, because there's some pretty funny stuff that happened. But yes, he showed me exactly how to pull the old muffler out and to install the new one. And in the process, I learned, some of the things that you just can't read in a book or a manual or learn in a training. And so it taught me, more about the product. But I think the main thing really, and how that story became kind of, my signature story, and people called me Muffler Mama, is that I was just willing to go beyond what other salespeople would do. All these men that called on them, nobody ever installed a muffler. And I'm thinking, if, my thought is that if you can find a way to create a signature story like that, whether it's touring your own factory or, just going above and beyond to learn about your customer, but also to prove to them that you are different.
Mm-hmm.
That made a huge difference in my career. And it's the only muffler I've ever installed.
I know. I wish I had had the flash dance music cued, because that was
that story's in the book. And yeah, pretty funny coincidence.
Well, we're short on time, so I'll just end with a final question so that readers know, what's in it for them. What will readers take away from this book?
You will get some really great refreshers on the fundamentals. And I know I've talked to experienced salespeople who have read this book, and they say, a lot of this stuff, is sales basics, but there are things that your competition doesn't do. And maybe you don't even do. Either you've forgotten or gotten out of the habit. But I've talked to so many people who've had bad sales experiences, or, so, some of the fundamentals of listening and trust and, rapport, those things are really cemented. And I use some, fun stories to tell those principles. I also give you creative ideas that you have not thought of. I guarantee there's something in here that you haven't thought of. And last but least, I try to give you some encouragement, motivation. Sales can be really hard, but there are all different kinds of ways to sell. I don't have an aggressive personality, but I have a determined personality. And if you are watching this or reading this book, I know you have that determination. So it's really just, some encouragement. I'm your cheerleader, and kind of you can do it, with some really, really great strategies that you can use to make more sales.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you haven't already done so, make sure that you pick up a copy of Kay Miller's Uncopyable Sales Secrets: How to Create an Unfair Advantage and Outsell Your Competition, being released by Sound Wisdom. And we are so excited about this book. You will learn so much and take away, a really enjoyable perspective on sales. So thanks so much for being with us, Kay.
Yes, thank you for watching and listening, and I really appreciate you ordering my book. Drop me a line. My email's in the back of the book.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jen.